Now to Bridget Phillipson, the Shadow Education Secretary. Bridget Phillipson, good afternoon to you. What would you say, I think you watched it, what would you say to the parents that we saw there in Paul's piece, who is now going to be priced out of sending her child to a private school?
Hello, good afternoon. I mean, what I would say is that I do recognise the right of parents to choose where they educate their children, and that can extend to a private school. But there are tough decisions to make about how we prioritise public money, and Labour's plans would mean that we can deliver 6,500 more teachers into our state schools, that we can provide better mental health support for our children, at a time when we know that schools are under really big pressure, as you just heard there in your piece. And private school fees have gone up year on year, way beyond inflation. And the school that you just featured there, their fees are £15,000 a year. Now, parents are absolutely within their rights to choose to send their children to private schools with fees of that nature. But that is way beyond the reach of most parents. And my priority, if I were Education Secretary in a Labour government, would be to invest in our state system, where the vast majority of children go to school.
And you'll know, Bridget Phillipson, that many parents who are able to pay for those fees will have scrimped and saved and sacrificed to try and give what they think would be the best education to their kids by sending them to private school. It's not always the super rich who do it, is it, Miss Phillipson? So what do you say then to those people who are right on that cusp, who are going to miss out now of this, despite them having spent all this time saving for it?
All parents are aspirational and ambitious for their children, not just those who can afford to send their children to private schools. And there are decisions to be made about how we spend public money. And I don't believe that the tax breaks that private schools enjoy can continue to be justified, given the enormous pressures that our state schools are under at the moment. But we would use that money to drive high and rising standards in our state system, so that we've got more teachers in key subjects where there are big gaps at the moment. So, for example, maths and science, where increasingly children in our state schools are being taught by teachers who are not expert in their field because of the big challenges we see around recruitment and retention. And we'd use that money as well to deliver better mental health support for our children, which parents know is a really big challenge that too many children are experiencing at the moment. And private schools are businesses who can choose to make decisions about how they make their budgets stack up, something that state schools have had to do relentlessly over the last 14 years under the Conservatives. And I think private schools can learn how to cut their cloth.
Would you prefer, or would you like to see private schools, have you had these conversations with those who are running them, that they should absorb this cost? As you say, fees have gone up in many private schools over the past few years.
Yes, I've had candid conversations with school leaders who are running private schools. I absolutely respect their right to air their views, to make the case against Labour's plans in this area. But if we form the next government, we will press ahead with this, because our focus is on driving high and rising standards in our state sector, but we've got to pay for it. And this policy, according to the Independent Institute for Fiscal Studies, would raise £1.3 to £1.5 billion net, and we would invest that money directly into our state system, where the vast majority of children go to school, and where your viewers will want to see better outcomes for their children.
More than 90% go to state schools, of course, as Paul said in his report. Let's talk then about potential Labour plans for kids and for schools. You say in your promises that children will have a broader and richer curriculum. How would a future Labour government change this current curriculum?
So my concern is that increasingly only parents who can afford to pay for extras are able to deliver that range of opportunities where it comes to music, sport, art and drama. And I want all children in our state schools to have access to that richness and to that breadth. And I think that has to go hand in hand with high and rising standards and strong academic expectations. And we'll do that by delivering an expert-led review of curriculum. We would launch that process very quickly if we were to form the next government, to make sure that all of our children are well prepared for the future. But what I would say is that whatever the Conservatives say about the outcome of this election, whatever people think the polls point to, if people want change, then the only way to bring that about is to go out and vote for it on the 4th of July.
You got there for the call to arms, Bridget Phillipson. Look, you talk about expert-led review, and I know you've been looking at this subject for a long old time. So have you identified who those experts will be who will lead this review for you?
We would make announcements in this if we were to form the next government. We're not getting ahead of ourselves here. We've still got a little while left on the election campaign. We're fighting hard for every vote, But what I would say is that if people put their trust in us, they can be confident that we will hit the ground running and we will start to make an impact very rapidly to demonstrate that we are delivering on the trust that the British people have put on us. But none of that can be taken for granted, and everything is still to play for.
A little bit more on your potential brief and your shadow brief at the moment, then. You'll know that the current Education Secretary, Gillian Keegan, recently outlawed the teaching of gender identity within schools. Is that something that the Labour Party would maintain if they were to take power?
I'm afraid that isn't quite what's happened in recent times. There are two things that have been going on here. One, there is the consultation that is closed, where the government has yet to publish responses to that consultation on gender questioning children within school. Alongside that, there is a consultation at the moment which is still open around the teaching of relationships, sex and health education within our schools. So that hadn't closed at the point of the election. I do believe it is important that schools have got clear guidance in these areas, and I've heard directly from school leaders that they want clarity, that they want to make sure that they are supporting children and they're doing right on an area which is sensitive and is about children's well-being. And I want to make sure that we put front and centre the well-being of children in all of our discussions, that we get this right, we don't make it a political battleground. But no, there should not be pushing of ideology onto children. That applies right across the board.
Okay. Thank you for the clarification on that. What about mobile phones in schools? Would Labour ban that?
Most schools already have a policy preventing the use of mobile phones during the school day. I think that is absolutely right, because they cannot be a distraction to children's learning. But this is happening already, and I think schools face lots of other challenges as well, where Labour would take action if we form the next government.
And last question on social media. You'll know that the Education Select Committee has talked about the shocking damage being done to young people. This is slightly outside your brief, I know, Bridget Phillipson, but what are your thoughts on social media and the effects on those under the age of 16? Should it be banned?
I think we need tighter regulation. I think parents need better support in order to manage children's use of social media, the time that they spend on devices. I think technology can be a force for good, and all of our young people need to be prepared for the world that they will enter as adults, and that's why a Labour government would have a bigger push around young people having the skills they need to assess what's in front of them, to have kind of strong digital literacy skills too. But alongside that, we've got to have tougher regulation where it comes to the online tech giants, so we can limit the damaging and dangerous material that sadly often children are being exposed to online.
Bridget Phillipson, Shadow Education Secretary, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.